Why is it wire fraud? Great question. I'd love to tell you. So in order to have wire fraud, one of the first things you have to have is some sort of scheme, and it needs to be interstate. So for this portion of it, just know that the orange represents South Dakota, Virginia, and Ohio for now. Understand that what is an orange is a media company, because once the money in this scheme ends up with a media company, it's basically trapped in it forever. Green is going to represent Delaware corporations or dark money. So we find out a couple months ago that Kristi Noem received $80,000 from her own Ashwood LLC Delaware company that she set up on the same day that she sets up the American Resolve Political Action Committee. She says that this is a 10% payment for raising funds for a nonprofit, so we're going to want to be mindful to look for a nonprofit account in here. Now, Stacy Good is the treasurer. South Dakota is where we're at. Virginia is the interstate, okay? So Stacy Good is the treasurer, but we find out through running her address that she is also the treasurer of these 6 political action committees. And what's the connection there? Well, just like she is under investigation for moving money from a Delaware corporation to a political action committee into herself, Stacy Good had set up this Ardley Impact. And within weeks, $3 million gets sent to these 6 organizations for which she is the treasurer. Now, the Campaign Legal Center is looking into this. They have filed with the FEC. This is known as a straw donor operation, and it's a fraud. It is illegal. Take hashtags anywhere that there is current investigation to prove, right, that this is illegal. But the problem is they're looking at this from a civil standpoint when they need to be looking at it from a criminal RICO standpoint. One of your questions about wire fraud, one way that you can commit that that's unique to campaigns and political action committees is not having a authority line saying where the messaging is coming from. And sure as shit, Stacy Good is also the treasurer of the 1776 project. Money does get funneled from there back up into the system, but we're not done with that part yet. So they paid a fine of $20,250 in Maryland because, again, Stacy Good was caught doing illegal shit. She also has a charge for the same thing in California, but it did get dropped during COVID due to the fact that it was only $300 worth of mailers, and she acknowledged the wrongdoing. Now, the other enterprises are just going to be accounts that Kristi Noem has access to, one being federal and state taxpayer money. And then, of course, she has a campaign account, which in South Dakota, you can access your account forever, even when you're not in office. So she has the state Kristi for Governor account, campaign account with $3 million in it, and then a federal one, which is interesting because she never ran for federal office. The state for Kristi, her governor one, is chaired by Steve Kirby and treasured by Stacy Good. Now, Kristi Noem also enacted legislation in 2021 enabling the right to refuse disclosures from nonprofits. Now, there are very few nonprofits in this circle, so we really want to pay attention to that. That is a big deal because the other thing you need, right, is intent. So after this is passed, the Dakota Institute of Legislative Solutions is created, and it starts with a budget of $800,000. And nobody knows where it came from, which brings us to the Dakota Scout lawsuit. Because it could be taxpayer money, we don't know where it came from. So they are also under investigation for ethics violations for some of the things they did, including deceitful literature that they put out. Now, there's a real nasty motherfucker called Rob Burgess. Rob Burgess was the chair, but also the treasurer of the Dakota Institute of Legislative Solutions with Stacy Good. But at this point in time, Rob Burgess also, outside of this is a nonprofit charity. Rob Burgess sets up a political action committee called Take Back the West. At the same time that he was the chair of Take Back the West, he was the chairman of McShane LLC. So see how it's always going to end with a private media company? 100% of all expenditures from Take Back the West went to McShane LLC, the most controversial being the largest portion of their budget. The South Point Hotel and Casino in Vegas, 5 days after the election, transferred $50,000 to a political action committee, and they washed it immediately. All of the funds went to McShane LLC, aka Rob Burgess. Then, in an in-kind payment to the Donald Trump administration, where all of these funds end up, wouldn't you know it, she headlined an event selling her book and campaigning for Donald Trump at the South Point Hotel and Casino at a rodeo. Again, this is going to circle back to the Dakota Scout lawsuit because they were suing because they wanted to see her financial disclosures because it was our taxpayer money that she was sending to Donald Trump. This sort of media company is going to be a big deal. With what we believe to be taxpayer funding, she paid Center Street Publishing to publish a book for her. Then a bunch of PACs ended up buying it, which is another reason it's a racket. But because she was traveling to promote her book and possibly publish her book on taxpayer funding, that's illegal and also part of the Dakota Scout lawsuit. But what's particularly interesting is that she alleges that this $80,000 was a 10% fundraising fee for a nonprofit. The only nonprofit in this scheme so far is the Dakota Institute of Legislative Solutions. I find it interesting that they start with $800,000 that she deliberately hid, aka intent, and then you see $78,900 get funneled from a hotel to Taking Back the West to Rob Burgess McShane LLC. And then, of course, the Trump presidency benefits from that through in-kind payments. But she also takes our federal funding and receives in-kind payments from Corey Lewandowski in the form of consulting. She had fired or had 4 or 5 chiefs of staff basically resign or get fired. So Corey Lewandowski is basically serving for free consulting to the governor of South Dakota while also being paid by President Trump. And if you want to know the value of an in-kind payment, you sell it. His consulting fees are $20,000 a month. So she also has to pay him back, right? Because all of our taxpayer money ends up out of the state and benefiting the Trump administration, the vast majority of it. So then she diverts federal funding to the Department of Labor and decides that she's going to do this Freedom Works Here campaign, giving that funding directly to Ben Yoho, the associate of Corey Lewandowski and owner of Go West Media. They commit many crimes here, one of them being that Go West Media has WPA intelligence write a fake RFP and send it out, even though they had already known it was fake, and Kristi Noem was going to make sure that Go West Media got that money. Which brings us to probably our first victim here, who are going to be like the John Doe companies, but also the company that bid, because she gave their trade secret to Go West Media. So she had all these South Dakota companies bid, chose her favorite advertisement, and then gave it all back to Corey Lewandowski, Ben Yoho, and Go West Media. What's crazy about this too is that they decide they need more money, so she tells businesses, hey, I'm going to advertise for you if you give $10,000. So she took $250,000 from several businesses in South Dakota to contribute to commercials about herself that actually benefited Donald Trump, and she did so saying that it was in order to get people to work in South Dakota. Not only did they never receive employees as promised, but I did my usual double agent shit, and I pretended like I lived in another state to sign up for job alerts in South Dakota. And just so you know, the only job on here in South Dakota is in Dakota Dunes, North Sioux City at the top. All of these other jobs are Sioux City and South Sioux City, Nebraska. Likewise, within this same group of Corey Lewandowski, Kristi Noem, Stacey Good, and Rob Burgess, who are kind of the masterminds, they use these accounts also to send money to Ohio, these other people in Ohio, which included Matt Dolan and Jim Jordan. But this one here spent $1.7 million, almost their entire expenditures, on DeCello Media, which is actually a subsidiary of Smart Media, owned by Paul Wynn. You guessed it, diverted back to Virginia. Now, they do some fundraising, and why is their fundraising fraudulent or wire fraud? That all comes down to America First War Room and Parler. To save time, I put a whole bunch of examples up on Substacks, the emails that I have received over the last 2. Or you can read this article. Kristi Noem kind of got the ball rolling with this, where she sent money pretending she was fundraising for someone else, but diverting funds back to herself. So what's going on with America's Newsroom and Parler? I talked about this when Randy Fine was running, but like I said, I first started paying attention to this when Kristi Noem got caught doing it. And what happened was I would get mass emails from, it would say Rudy Giuliani, Charlie Kirk, Scott Pressler, whatever, all of them, and you could go read a lot of them on Substack. But the thing is when you'd click to donate or click to sign, it would always take you back to America's Newsroom organization, and America's Newsroom was a political action committee, but their status got terminated for violations. So they're saying they're a newsletter, but I'm like, where are they getting the data to send these emails out? If you go far enough back, it's usually Parler, the conservative, no longer social media site. And you will get the same exact email for like 10 different organizations, all of those political action committees, and a lot more. This here, barely tip of the iceberg. As you can see, I'm not even done with this side of the poster. Maybe I'll start selling those instead of merch. But also, they fail to have an authority line at the bottom of them. And some of them have deliberately jumbled up all the numbers and the address. They're all essentially fake. So we also looked into who and how are they finding people to send these to, because they're incredibly predatory. Like, it's written to, it also has signatures of like Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, but it isn't them writing it, so that's also illegal. So it's just pure deception. Justin bought a Donald Trump coin and a Donald Trump Mother's Day card to see like as a prank, and anybody that's also buying Donald Trump merch will end up on this mailing list, and you cannot get out. I unsubscribe constantly. You can't get out because it's just like a mass data center that if you've ever interacted with it, you will continue to get those emails. I have at least 1,000 from over the last 2 years. Anyways, describing this sort of crime is very difficult, brought to you by Sharpie. Let me know if you want to see the rest of it when it's done, or if you prefer to see it in small segments, because I understand it's complicated, but understanding it will help you actually understand what we mean when we're talking about dark money and how we can actually solve it. First of all, I hate you, Delaware. You are responsible for most of our problems.